Hey everyone, Elizabeth here. The Last Laugh delivers stories that leave you speechless. If you're here for it, hit subscribe and let's go.
The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, marked with my mother's formal email signature, the one she reserved for church committees and charity board correspondence. Rachel, we're hosting the annual family reunion at the Anderson estate this year. Your father's professional colleagues and their families will be joining us. Given your current situation, perhaps it would be best if you attended only the casual Sunday brunch rather than the formal Saturday evening reception. Immediate family preferred. Your situation might cause questions we'd rather not address. I read it twice, standing in my kitchen with my coffee cooling in my hand. My situation. That's what they called it now. My sister Jennifer's text came 30 minutes later. Mom told me about the reunion. Just FY. Dad's senior partners are coming. Their kids are all Ivy League. Maybe wear something nice if you do show up? Also, his colleagues are attending. Successful people. You know how it is. I replied with a single thumbs up emoji and deleted both messages. My situation. My current status. The family embarrassment. For 8 years I'd been the subject of whispered conversations and disappointed sighs. The daughter who dropped out of Stanford. The one who took that weird government job nobody understood. The sister who lived in a modest apartment and drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic while Jennifer drove her third BMW. What exactly do you do again? Uncle Robert had asked at last year's Thanksgiving, his tone suggesting he already knew the answer would be inadequate. Government contract work, I'd said. Oh. His face had fallen. Well, stable benefits, I suppose. My father had changed the subject quickly, his embarrassment palpable. His youngest daughter, the underachiever. The one who had somehow squandered every opportunity they'd given her. They didn't know. None of them knew. And I'd kept it that way deliberately. The Anderson family specialized in visible success. My father, Thomas Anderson, was a senior partner at Morrison & Associates, one of the most prestigious corporate law firms in Washington, D.C. My mother, Catherine, served on 4 nonprofit boards and chaired the Hospital Foundation's annual gala. Jennifer was their golden child. Yale undergraduate, Harvard MBA, now a rising star at Goldman Sachs. She posted her accomplishments with the frequency and precision of a marketing campaign. Her engagement to Marcus, a venture capitalist with a family connection to 2 senators, had been announced in the Washington Post Society pages. And then there was me. Rachel Anderson, the disappointment. The one who'd thrown away her Stanford education after 2 years to take a job nobody could brag about at cocktail parties. She does something with computers for the government, my mother would say vaguely when asked, her tone apologetic. We're not entirely sure of the details. You know how those positions are. Nothing particularly notable. What they didn't know, what I'd never told them, was that I'd left Stanford because I'd been recruited. Aggressively recruited. Flown to a facility I couldn't name, interviewed by people whose credentials I couldn't verify, offered a position that came with immediate top-secret clearance and a salary that made Jennifer's Wall Street income look modest. At 20, I'd become one of the youngest senior cybersecurity contractors in the Department of Homeland Security's history. By 23, I was running threat assessment protocols for critical infrastructure protection. By 25, I held Level 5 security clearance and briefed cabinet members on national security vulnerabilities. I was now 28. My official title was Senior Infrastructure Security Specialist. My unofficial role involved preventing the kind of cyber attacks that could collapse the national power grid, compromise military communications, or crash the financial system. My annual compensation, including bonuses and stock options from my private consulting work, exceeded $3 million. The non-disclosure agreements I'd signed filled a 2-inch binder. The number of people who knew the full scope of my work could fit in a small conference room. My family wasn't in that room. People often asked why I didn't tell them. Why I let my family believe I was barely scraping by in some forgettable government cubicle. The answer was simple: I was watching. I'd watched Jennifer borrow $50,000 from my parents for a business opportunity that never materialized. I'd watched my cousin David convince Uncle Robert to co-sign a loan he defaulted on within 6 months. I'd watched my mother's sister, Aunt Patricia, manipulate her way into my grandmother's will, changing provisions weeks before she passed. Money revealed character. Success attracted opportunists. So I'd created a fiction. I dressed down for family events. I drove the old Civic I'd bought in college, even though 3 luxury cars sat in my private garage across town. I lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment, my public residence, while my actual home was a 4,000-square-foot townhouse in Georgetown I'd purchased through an LLC. I paid for my parents' mortgage. They didn't know that. When the bank had threatened foreclosure 4 years ago after my father's firm hit financial troubles, I'd purchased the debt through a shell corporation and restructured the terms. As far as they knew, the bank had simply worked with them. I'd anonymously funded my nephew's medical treatment when insurance wouldn't cover his specialized therapy. The donation came through a charitable foundation my sister never thought to research. I watched. I protected them from a distance. And I collected data on who they really were when they thought I had nothing to offer them. The data wasn't encouraging. The Anderson estate wasn't actually our family property. My parents rented it for significant occasions, a sprawling colonial venue in Virginia horse country that photographed beautifully for my mother's social media. The annual reunion had grown over the years from a simple family barbecue into an elaborate networking event where my father's professional connections mingled with extended family. This year's invitation had been particularly pointed. Immediate family preferred. Translation: We're finally admitting you're an embarrassment, so please make yourself scarce. I should have declined. I should have spent the weekend at my Georgetown townhouse, working on the infrastructure assessment report due Monday, enjoying the home theater system my family didn't know I owned. Instead, I confirmed my attendance for both Saturday evening and Sunday brunch. My security detail coordinator, Agent Marcus Chin, had raised an eyebrow when I'd submitted the location for advance clearance. A family reunion requires a security assessment? He'd asked. I'm required to report any gatherings over 50 people where I'll be present, I'd reminded him. Protocols. You could just skip it. I could. But I didn't. Because the invitation, the explicit request that I minimize my embarrassing presence, had crystallized something I'd been considering for months. It was time they knew. Not all of it. The classified details would stay classified. But the fundamental truth they'd missed for 8 years while they pitied and dismissed me. I wasn't their charity case. I was the one keeping them afloat. Saturday morning, I met with Agent Chin at a Starbucks in Arlington. The venue's been cleared, he said, sliding a folder across the table. Standard social gathering, no elevated threats. But I want to review protocols. You're planning to maintain cover. Not exactly. He paused, coffee cup halfway to his mouth. Explain. My security detail will be visible tonight. Rachel. That violates every operational security protocol we've. I've cleared it with Director Morrison, I interrupted. Personal circumstances. She signed off. Director Sarah Morrison had actually laughed when I'd explained the situation. Your family thinks you're a low-level paper pusher? For 8 years. And you want to what? Show up with a security detail to a family barbecue? My sister uninvited me from the formal reception because my presence might embarrass them in front of my father's corporate lawyer colleagues, I'd said. I'd like to correct that misunderstanding. She'd signed the authorization immediately. I wish I could be there to see their faces. Now Chin was reviewing the operational plan with the resigned expression of someone who knew when to stop arguing. Standard visible protection. 3-person detail. We'll arrive separately, establish position, then approach when you signal. Perfect. Your family is going to have questions. I'm counting on it. I arrived at the Anderson estate at 6:47 p.m., wearing a dress I'd purchased specifically for this occasion. Alexander McQueen, $4,200, tailored to perfection. My jewelry was understated but recognizable to anyone who knew luxury. Cartier watch, Tiffany earrings, a simple Bulgari necklace. Total value, approximately $47,000. My mother's face when I walked in was a masterpiece of conflicting emotions. Surprise that I'd come. Confusion at my appearance. Concern about what my presence might mean. Rachel. We didn't expect you at the evening reception. The invitation said immediate family, I replied smoothly. That's me. Jennifer approached, Marcus trailing behind her. Her eyes scanned my outfit with the precision of a luxury goods appraiser. I watched the calculations happen in real time. That dress cost more than her monthly apartment rent. Nice dress, she said carefully. Special occasion? Just felt like dressing up. The venue was exactly as my mother had envisioned. Elegant, impressive, designed to showcase the Anderson family's status to my father's colleagues. Approximately 70 people milled through the garden and main hall. I recognized several senior partners from Morrison and Associates, a federal judge, 2 congressmen my father had cultivated relationships with. My father found me near the bar. "Rachel, glad you could make it." His tone suggested the opposite. "Perhaps stay toward the back. Some of these guests are, well, you understand." "I understand perfectly, Dad." Uncle Robert cornered me by the hors d'oeuvres table. "So Rachel, still doing that computer thing? Government contract work, yes. Must be nice. Stable paycheck. Good benefits, I imagine." His condescension was almost artful. Not the kind of pressure Jennifer faces on Wall Street, of course. "Different pressures," I agreed. Jennifer's fiancé Marcus joined us, drink in hand. "Robert, have you met the new deputy director? He's here tonight, I should introduce you." They drifted away, leaving me alone with a plate of canapés I didn't want. This was my family's gathering. Their world of impressive credentials and carefully cultivated connections. And I was the piece that didn't fit. The embarrassing gap in an otherwise perfect portfolio. I checked my watch. 7:23 p.m. I sent a single text message. Position. 3 minutes later, the first security detail member entered the venue. Agent Chin moved through the crowd with the distinctive bearing of federal law enforcement, not aggressive but unmistakably official. His suit was dark, his earpiece visible. 2 additional agents followed, establishing positions at key entry points. The conversations around me began to falter. People noticed. You couldn't miss 3 federal agents moving with purpose through a garden party. My mother appeared at my elbow. "Rachel, do you know what's happening? Why are there?" Agent Chin reached us. He nodded to my mother, then turned to me with professional formality. "Ms. Anderson, we're ready for transport whenever you are." The garden had gone quiet. 70 people were now watching this interaction with varying degrees of curiosity and alarm. My father pushed through the crowd. "Excuse me, what's going on here? This is a private event. I'm Special Agent Marcus Chin, Department of Homeland Security." He didn't show his credentials, he didn't need to. Everything about him screamed federal authority. "We're Ms. Anderson's security detail." Security detail? My father's confusion was absolute. There must be some mistake. "My daughter is." "Your daughter is one of our senior infrastructure protection contractors," Chin said calmly. "She holds level 5 security clearance. We provide protection detail for her public appearances per standard protocols." Jennifer's voice cut through the silence. "That's ridiculous. Rachel works some basic government job." The second agent, Agent Torres, stepped forward. "Ma'am, Ms. Anderson is currently assigned to the Critical Infrastructure Protection Division. She reports directly to the Deputy Director and provides briefings to the National Security Council." I watched my father's face cycle through emotions. Confusion, disbelief, the first dawning comprehension that he'd missed something fundamental. Uncle Robert found his voice. "This is some kind of joke." "No joke, sir." Agent Chen's tone allowed no argument. "Ms. Anderson's work involves national security operations at the highest levels. Her cover employment profile was necessary for operational security, but her actual position is considerably more significant than." He glanced at me, and I saw the hint of amusement in his eyes. "Basic government work." My mother had gone pale. "Rachel, is this true?" Before I could answer, a new voice cut through the crowd. "I can verify everything Agent Chin just said." Director Sarah Morrison walked into the garden, and I genuinely hadn't expected that. She'd said she wished she could see this moment, but I'd assumed she was joking about actually attending. She was not joking. Sarah Morrison was 53, with the kind of presence that commanded immediate respect. She'd run counterterrorism operations for 15 years before taking her current position. When she walked into a room, people noticed. My father certainly noticed. "Who are you?" "Director Sarah Morrison, Department of Homeland Security, Infrastructure Security Division." She extended her hand. "You must be Thomas Anderson. Rachel speaks very highly of you." That was generous. I'd mentioned my father exactly twice in 8 years, both times in security clearance interviews. Director Morrison turned to address the crowd. I apologize for the interruption of your event. I wanted to personally ensure Ms. Anderson's security arrangements were properly coordinated. She's been working on a critical assessment this week, and we take protection protocols very seriously. One of my father's senior partners, Richard Hayes, a man who'd barely acknowledged my existence at past family events, stepped forward. Director Morrison, forgive me, but this is quite unexpected. We had no idea Thomas's daughter was involved in such significant work. That's intentional, Morrison replied. Ms. Anderson's operational security requires a low public profile. The nature of her work involves protecting critical infrastructure systems from sophisticated threats. The less public attention, the better. She paused. Though I suppose at a private family gathering we can acknowledge her contributions. She's been instrumental in preventing several significant attacks over the past 3 years. I believe she's saved countless lives, though most people will never know it. The silence was deafening. Jennifer found her voice. Rachel, you told us you did basic contract work. Filing, administrative. I never said that, I corrected quietly. You all assumed. I just didn't correct the assumption. My mother's hand was at her throat. Why didn't you tell us? Director Morrison answered before I could. Need-to-know basis, Mrs. Anderson. Rachel's work is classified at levels that require extreme discretion. The people who know the full scope of her operations could fit in a small room. For what it's worth, she's one of the most talented analysts I've ever worked with. We're very fortunate to have her. Agent Chin checked his watch. Ma'am, we should move to secure location for the evening briefing. Briefing? My father looked like someone had struck him. On a Saturday night? National security doesn't follow a 9-to-5 schedule, sir, Chin replied. Morrison placed a hand on my father's shoulder. Thomas, your daughter literally keeps the lights on. The power grid, water systems, transportation infrastructure. Rachel's team monitors and protects the systems that keep this country functioning. When she gets called at 3 a.m., it's because something significant is happening. I don't understand. My mother's voice was small. Rachel, you live in that tiny apartment. You drive that old car. We thought. Operational security. Morrison interjected smoothly. We encourage our high-level contractors to maintain modest public profiles. Draws less attention. Fewer security risks. That was technically true, though not the full reason for my choices. Jennifer was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. The government job. The one we all thought was. Entry-level paper pushing? I finished. Yes. That one. Uncle Robert had recovered enough to bluster. Well, this is all very impressive, but surely you could have mentioned. No, Morrison said flatly. She couldn't have. The security clearances she holds, the access she has to classified systems, she literally cannot discuss her work. Not with family, not with friends, not with anyone outside authorized channels. One of the congressmen present, Representative Morrison, no relation to Director Morrison, stepped forward. Sarah, I had no idea one of Thomas's daughters was with your division. Rachel prefers to keep her professional and personal lives very separate, David, Director Morrison replied. For good reason. The work she does makes her a potential target for some very sophisticated actors. My mother actually gasped. Target? Rachel is in danger. No more than anyone else in her position, Chin said. That's why we have security protocols. That's why we're here tonight. The pieces were falling into place for my family. 8 years of dismissed achievements, of casual condescension, of assumptions that I'd failed to live up to Anderson family standards. And the reality, I'd been operating at levels they couldn't imagine, doing work they'd never understand, holding clearances that made most of their professional achievements look quaint. Marcus, Jennifer's fiancé, was the first to voice what several people were clearly thinking. So when Rachel said she couldn't make it to events because of work, she was probably preventing a cyber attack on critical infrastructure, Morrison said. Last Thanksgiving, for instance, I believe Rachel missed your family dinner because she was coordinating the response to an attempted breach of the Eastern power grid. She worked 72 hours straight that week. I remembered that Thanksgiving. My mother had called me 3 times, each message more disappointed than the last. I suppose work comes first. Again. Work had come first. Work that kept 43 million people from losing power during a November cold snap. Jennifer's face had gone through several colors. Rachel, I had no idea. All those times I suggested you needed career counseling. I appreciated the concern, I said dryly. My father was still processing. But your apartment, your car. We thought you were struggling financially. I'm not. But. Director Morrison checked her phone. I hate to cut this short, but Rachel does actually have a briefing call in 30 minutes. Threat assessment for Monday's cabinet meeting. He smiled at my parents. You should be very proud. Your daughter is quite remarkable. After Morrison and the security detail left, a departure carefully staged to maximize impact, the party resumed in name only. Nobody was paying attention to the catered food or the open bar. Everyone was looking at me. My father pulled me aside onto the veranda. Rachel, I don't know what to say. That's a first. He winced. I deserve that. We've been treating you like a charity case. Yes. The mortgage restructuring 3 years ago. When the bank suddenly became cooperative. His eyes widened. That was you. I said nothing. Rachel, how much of our financial stability has been you? I'm not discussing that tonight, Dad. Jennifer found us. Marcus was conspicuously absent. I suspected he was Googling level 5 security clearances and having several realizations about his fiancée's family connections. Rachel, I'm so sorry, Jennifer began. All those comments about career advancement, about getting a real job. You thought you were being helpful, I said. You weren't. But you thought you were. Can you tell us anything about what you actually do? No. Nothing. I can tell you that I work in cybersecurity for the Department of Homeland Security. I can tell you that I hold high-level security clearances. Everything beyond that is classified. I paused. I can tell you that I'm very good at what I do and I'm compensated accordingly. My mother had joined us, her eyes red. When you missed Christmas 2 years ago. Coordinating response to a ransomware attack targeting hospital systems, I said. I helped prevent the shutdown of 847 hospitals across 17 states. I worked for 96 hours straight. And we guilt-tripped you about missing dinner, my mother whispered. Yes. Uncle Robert appeared, considerably more humble than he'd been 30 minutes earlier. Rachel, I owe you an apology. We all do. You owe me basic respect, I corrected. The apology is appreciated. But what I needed was for you all to trust that I knew what I was doing with my life. The party wound down early. People left with curious glances and speculative whispers. I'd become the subject of intense interest, no longer the disappointing Anderson daughter, but a mysterious figure with government security details and access to classified operations. Before I left, my father stopped me at my car. My actual car, the Tesla Model S I'd driven tonight instead of the Honda Civic. New car? He asked quietly. 3 years old. I just don't usually bring it to family events. Because you were hiding. Because I was protecting myself, I corrected. From assumptions. From expectations. From people who measure worth by visible success. He nodded slowly. I failed you as a father. You dismissed me as a daughter, I said. There's a difference. Can we fix this? I considered the question. 8 years of condescension. 8 years of supporting them financially while they pitted my supposed failures. 8 years of watching them reveal exactly who they were when they thought I had nothing to offer. I don't know, Dad. That depends on whether you can respect someone whose achievements you can't brag about at cocktail parties. I drove away before he could answer. Monday morning, 6:47 a.m. my phone rang. My mother. Rachel, your father and I have been talking all weekend. We want to understand. We want to be part of your life properly. That's nice, Mom. Jennifer told me she looked up level 5 clearances. She said only a few hundred people in the entire government hold them. Sounds about right. Rachel, why didn't you tell us? We could have been proud. You could have been proud of me without knowing the classified details, I interrupted. You could have trusted that I was capable of making my own career decisions. You could have respected me when I said I was happy with my work. Silence. But you needed visible markers of success, I continued. A prestigious company name. A title you could drop at dinner parties. You needed to be able to explain me in a way that reflected well on you. That's not fair. Mom, you uninvited me from the formal reception because my presence might embarrass you in front of Dad's colleagues. The invitation literally said my situation might cause questions. More silence. I love you, I said, but I don't trust you yet. That's going to take time. What can we do? Respect my boundaries. Accept that large portions of my life will remain private. And maybe examine why you needed me to fail before you could appreciate that I hadn't. I ended the call before she could respond. 6 months after the Anderson estate reunion, things had settled into a new normal. My family knew I worked for the Department of Homeland Security in a high-level capacity. They didn't know specifics, they'd never know specifics, but they'd stopped assuming I needed their pity or career advice. Jennifer and I had lunch monthly now. She'd apologized 17 times in the first month alone. We were working toward actual sisterhood rather than performative family obligation. My parents had backed off. My mother no longer introduced me with apologetic explanations of my situation. My father had stopped suggesting I consider law school. Uncle Robert sent me a formal written apology and a request to discuss investment opportunities, which I declined. Some relationships weren't worth salvaging. I still drove the Honda Civic to family events. Some boundaries remained necessary. Director Morrison had laughed when I'd thanked her for appearing at the reunion. That was the most fun I've had in months. Your uncle's face when I mentioned national security briefings, priceless. You didn't have to come. Rachel, you've prevented 4 major infrastructure attacks this year alone. You've earned the right to correct your family's misconceptions about your capabilities. The work continued. Classified briefings. Late-night emergency responses. The constant, invisible war against sophisticated threats that most people would never know about. And now when I missed family events for work they understood. Not the details, never the details, but the importance. The invitation to this year's Anderson Estate reunion arrived last week. No qualifications. No suggestions that I might want to skip portions. Just, Rachel, your presence is requested at all events. We'd be honored if you'd attend. I marked my calendar for both days. Some bridges could be rebuilt. Fully. Carefully. With appropriate security clearances. I was Rachel Anderson. Not the family disappointment. Not the success story they could brag about. Just someone doing important work, protecting the systems that kept the country running and finally, getting basic respect from the people who should have given it all along. The rest was classified.